Hello. Today we are going to look at square and cubed numbers. We've spoken about them before, and I'm sure most of you can remember them, but we're just going to go over a few bits. So, a square number, if you remember, is a number multiplied by itself. So that might be 3 times 3, it might be 4 times 4, it might be 7 times 7, it might be 48 times 48. But the square number is the product, when you which means the answer, when you multiply a number by itself. Now, the symbol for a squared number, let me just get rid of all this. The symbol for a squared number can be confusing, and I've had a lot of children confused in the past. So really think carefully. The symbol for a squared number, if we wanted to say 3 times 3, the symbol for that is 3 and then a little 2, like this. So you could say 3 times 3 equals 3 squared, which also equals 9. I've had a lot of children in the past looking at this 3 squared and thinking it's 3 times 2. It's not times 2. This little 2 just means multiply it by itself. So you multiply by 3 once, by 3 a second time. So that's why it's a 2. Okay, so the reason that they are called square numbers is because the numbers actually make a square. So if we have a look here on the next page, 1 times 1, you get this area of 1. If you've got 2 times 2, you've got, let's change colour so we don't get confused, you've got 2 dots times 2 dots. So you can see it makes a square. If we've then got 3 times 3 here, we get 3 dots. Sorry, my pen isn't quite lined up. That's really badly not lined up. So you get 3 times 3, but it continues to make this square. So 4 times 4 you can see. And down here in the bottom, what it's actually done for us is actually shown us those numbers. So it's actually filled in the gaps in the spaces. So you can see 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16. On your times table square, you'll be familiar with this particular square because it's in the front of your maths books. The square numbers, when we read our times table square, if you remember, we read up, oh, let's try that again. We read up and we read out. We read up and we read out. So these numbers here, if you read them up and out, you've got 6 times 6. You've got 10 times 10. You've got 8 times 8. So those are our squared numbers. It shows you them in yellow on that times table square we've got. And you can see the times table square is full of patterns, as is the 100 square. But you can see that it makes a really nice diagonal line going down from the top left to the bottom right. So it's a number times itself. Okay, so a square number, just to remind you, the thing you need to remember, if we were doing 4 squared, it would have a little 2. If we're doing 6 squared, it would have a little 2. If we're doing 47 squared, 47 times 47, it would have a little 2. That's what that 2 means. You times it by itself, not times by 2. So you must sort of think that in your head. It's not times by 2. It's not times by 2. The only time it is times by 2 is when it's 2 squared, because that is 2 times 2, but none of the others are. Okay, so we're now going to move on to cube numbers. Cube numbers are similar to square numbers, but instead of timesing by itself, you times by itself and then you times by itself again. So this time rather than working in 2 dimensions, you're actually working into a 3rd dimension. And that makes your cube number. So 1 times 1 times 1, 1 times 1 times 1. You've got 3 dimensions there. And that's why they're called cube numbers. So cube numbers, same with squared numbers, but instead of having a 2, it's a 3. The other way we say that is to the power of. So whatever that little number is, that's how many times you times it. So it's 2 times 2 times 2. That's 2 cubed. You could, this is going on a little bit more advanced, but you could say 4 to the power of 7, which would be 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 4 times 4. But we're not worrying about those at the moment. Okay, but we're not worrying about to the power of 7 today. We're just doing cubed and squared. So 3 up the top here is our cubed number. Okay, 3, which means 2 times 2 times 2. You do it 3 times. So going back to our pictures here, let's have a look at the 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 cubed. We've got here 2 times 2, there's our square number, but then we do it again, times 2. 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times that by 2, we get 8. So the same on the next one, 3 times 3 is 9, times that by 3, you get 27. 3 times 3 is 9, times that by 3, you get 27. And we keep going. Cube numbers obviously get bigger faster because you're timesing it 3 times. Okay, so just to recap for you, quick recap, if you have a little 2, you times it by itself. 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4. If you have a little 3, you times it by itself, and then you times it by itself again. 2 times 2 times 2, 3 times 3 times 3, 4 times 4 times 4. On the files, you've got some sheets to do just to fill in these. But if you want something a bit trickier, this puzzle it's actually been on Facebook quite recently, doing the rounds. The question is, how many cubes are missing to build a full cube? Now, a lot of people think, well, there's one here, there's one here. That would complete that sort of cross-section, that face there. And then I can see 1, 2, 3, those ones are missing. Then I can see those ones are missing. And they fill in that section. What they haven't noticed, though, is that along here, there's 5. And up here, there are only 4. Which means there needs to be a whole other square of cubes on the top. There's actually a whole level missing. So even if you were to complete all of these ones, you'd still need a whole level. It's like the roof's been cut off. It would be a cuboid, not a cube. And a lot of people aren't spotting that. So, and you will get questions like this sometimes in SATs papers because they're nasty and mean to you. So that's the sort of one you need to look out for. You've got to see there's only 5 there, but only 4 going up, which means we need a whole other level on the top. So you can work out for me if you want to how, if I get rid of all that drawing, you can now work out how many cubes you think I will need to complete this cube number and what the cube number is. So it would end up being 5 times 5 when we get our extra level in times 5. 5 cubed, or 5 times 5 times 5. You can have a go at working that out. Okay, so there are some simpler ones in Twinkle, a Twinkle sheet. There's also a challenge there, which has got not many square numbers, but it's also got some factors and some multiples. And then you can have a go at this one if you want to. And also you can look on the internet and for other cube number puzzles like this. How many cubes are missing? If you just type that into Google, you get puzzles. Okay, that's it for now. I hope that helped you. Just remember, square numbers have a little 2, cube numbers have a little 3. But don't forget that whatever that number is, it doesn't mean times by 2. It means times by itself. Or on the cubed, times by itself, and then times by itself again. Okay, that's the big mistake that people do, not times by 2. Okay, see you soon.